going on, guys? Boss6 here, back to your video, and today I'm here to give you guys yet another retro review, my blast from the past retro review, if you will. And today I have a big one here for you guys, and I've been wanting to do this one for at least about a month or two now, but I am finally able to talk about this album for you guys. And of course, it is going to be the Lone Studio album from Carnage, Dark Recollections. So yeah, this is a one-and-done album from this Swedish Death Metal act. Basically, the precursor to Swedish Death Metal. And I'll get into further detail here just a little bit. But yeah, I've been wanting to check this one out for a while now because I heard like this and another album we'll be talking about here in a little bit really helped pioneered the Swedish Death Metal sound. And it's very interesting how this band was basically a one-and-done when this band really could have done a little bit more, but it was due to bad timing and circumstances abound. But yeah, this one is probably not going to be too long of a retro review, considering that there wasn't really a whole lot of information I gathered from this band. I basically had to look up like retro reviews on YouTube, had to go to the archives, Wikipedia, so on and so forth, to gather as much information as I possibly could from this band here. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into the formation of Carnage. So this band formed in 1988 in Sweden by guitarist Michael Amat, who you guys might know, and bassist Johan Leva, who you guys might also know. I'll talk about those guys here later. But yeah, these guys formed Carnage, and they were searching for some other members around this time. They would get drummer Jeppe, I believe that's how you say his name. It's Jeppe. Jeppe Larsson, but he didn't stick around for much. He basically left within the year. And Johan would actually leave around that time too. So Michael was the lone man standing for this project. So he would actually get a stable lineup for this band. He had vocalist Maddie Karki, drummer Fred Etzby, guitarist David Blomqvist, and bassist Donnie Dordovik. If you guys don't know who these guys are, they're basically all the guys who would go on to be in Dismember. So yeah, it's literally a combination of Dismember and a future Carcass guitarist. I mean, sign the fuck up for that if you want to. So there was first two demos were actually recorded. One was, I think they were both recorded in 89. The first one, the day the man lost, and Manifestation of Evil. They were both recorded in 89 and released in 89, which more on the grind side, more so the day that man lost in particular. And with the Manifestation of Evil demo, that was where things were starting to go into a more different direction. So they were on Necrosis Records for this out initially, but then after that they would go on to sign with Earache Records when you could somewhat trust Earache, which this is a 2021 reissue that I have here that actually includes the demos for this album as well. And they would actually get a legendary producer Thomas Skosberg, who basically is the Swedish Scott Burns. So yeah, he would go on to do some legendary albums as well. And yeah, you might notice a little bit of a theme that I'm going to be talking about here. So on November 22nd, 1990, we would get their Lone Studio album, Dark Recollections. So interesting kind of time frame here with this album, because Swedish Death Metal wasn't really big until 1990 came around, because a little album by the name of Left Hand Path by Entombed would come out, and this would basically be somewhat of a companion piece to that album in some retrospective, because you will notice a fuck ton of Entombed worship is going to be on this album here. I mean, we kick off with the opening title track, and you get these 80s synthesizers, which is a little bizarre, but then you get into these HM2 buzzsaw-like riffs, and you're going to be hearing that a lot throughout this whole video. But a lot of Entombed on this album. There's some nice haunting melodies, and it really does kick off this album. And you will notice that throughout the entire album, a lot of like kind of like eerie like atmosphere and melody on this album, but it's done really, really, really well. Then we get to Torn Apart, which is one of my favorite tracks on this album. Nice, cool bass pops here and there. The bass pops up really nice. More mid-tempo. There's some nice, cool guitar harmonies on this one. And the synths show up yet again because, fuck it, why not? It's 1990. Then we get to Blasphemies of the Flesh. It's evil sounding, kind of a doomy-like intro. And there's a nice, like, HM2 kind of groove. And groove is kind of the key thing on this entire album, but it's done very effectively. Then we get to Infestation of Evil, almost blackened riffs at the beginning of this song. Again, more groove, almost thrashy to a lesser extent, more so on the drums and the guitars. And the evil vocal layering that they have, which would also show up on the next song as well. The bass shows up yet again, and there's like some like whispered lines, which I thought was very nice as well. Then we get to Gentle Exhuming. Kind of Slayer-like dive bombs on this song in particular. Again, the evil vocal layering shows up again, and there's also kind of like a layered bass. And that might due to the fact that the production is kind of changes on this album. And I'll talk about the production when I get done with this album. But yeah, you might notice a little bit of like layering here and there to make it more evil and more demonic sounding, which might bother some people, but I personally didn't mind it. Then we get to the next two tracks are actually probably two of my favorite songs on here. Deranged from Blood and Malignant Epitaph. Deranged from Blood, nice groovy breakdown intro. There's a lot of breakdown riffs that I really like. And people might be wondering why I keep saying breakdown riffs. It's basically riffs that are happening on a breakdown. And I actually really do like those riffs when they're done really well. Yeah, that's also a pretty groovy track. And then Malignant Epitaph, again, nice groove. Big machine gun-like drum work, which I thought was very nice. And the drum work kind of steals the show on that song in particular. I just love the fills, and he's just going ham on the toms and the cymbals. Then we get to Self-Dissection. A lot of Carcass melodies, and kind of a precursor to what's going to happen with Michael after this album. But yeah, you kind of notice that the Carcass melodies are kind of spread throughout this whole album, but it's really shown on Self-Dissection in particular. And then we get to essentially the final track on this album, Death Evocation, and it's very blast beaty. And blast beats aren't really prevalent on this album, but they are on it. Like, it's not like the main thing on this album. It's just a simple, nice groove. But on the song in particular, it's pretty blasty, which I really do enjoy. And then in the outro, it's just wind blowing, but you get a lot of like eerie riffs thrown in there. So I guess that counts for something. But yeah, all in all, this is a pretty killer album. If I do have one thing that I kind of do have a bit of a gripe about is that it's not really production-wise. I think the production's pretty good for the most part. It's got that nice kind of grit to it that I thought was really nice. There are some songs where it does sound like the production does change a little bit, but it didn't really bother me to the point where I was like, that kind of ruined it for me. Hell, if anything, the thing that might kind of, I wouldn't say bother me per se, is that it feels like some of these songs would have fit on an Entombed or even a Dismember album. Like, this feels like the album that Dismember and or Entombed never released, if you will. And that's not a bad thing. I think that's a good thing, personally, because, again, I think the riffs on this album are really damn good. I love the vocals on this album. The bass showing up's really nice, and the drum work is absolutely superb. And I think as an album on its own, I think it's fantastic. However, I do think some of these songs could have been on, like, an Entombed or a Dismember album. Like, Malignant Epitaph, for example, I felt like could have been on an Entombed album. And I believe Left Hand Path, was, it was released in June of 90. So this happened a few months afterwards. And you can clearly tell, and I feel like I should mention this as well, these guys were burned out by the time that this album was released, because I believe they recorded this in like 5 days, because they also self-produced this album. And you can tell that it was starting to hit them, because it's more kind of a mid-tempo like album in some capacity, because there's a lot of groove on this. Not really a whole lot of energy, but you can excuse it, because again, these guys were just burned the fuck out by the time the album was done. Like, these guys were exhausted. So had they probably waited a week to really fine-tune their craft, and maybe wait a little bit and kind of recollect their batteries and recollect their energy. Hell, this could have been on par with Entombed's Left Hand Path, in all honesty, but they kind of just want to get this done and out of the way so they can focus on other projects. So we get an album that it has a lot of great ideas, a lot of great riffs, great drum work. The vocals are pretty damn good. I do felt like the energy was kind of middle of the road here. And you can clearly tell, and you can understand why. So I'm not going to hold the band's feet to the fire here. So overall, I'm going to give this 4 stars. I really do dig this album. I think this is a damn good album. And it feels like they were going somewhere with this, but ultimately it was just a one and done. So you could kind of sense that this was a one and done in some capacity. And you can argue that it was probably Entombed leftovers, and maybe something that maybe Unleashed or maybe Grave or any of those bands could have picked up and possibly done better. You could have argued that, but I think for an album that stands on its own, I think it's really damn good. I really, really, really dug this album. This was a pretty damn good listen throughout. And yeah, honestly, if the energy was up a little bit, I think this would have been a better album. But as it is, it's a 4-star album for me personally. So we get to the aftermath. Why wasn't this album really, or why didn't this band last all that long? Well, after Dark Recollections, they really didn't tour on this album, because again, they were focusing on other projects at the time. Now, I did bring up Necrosis Records, and for those of you who are unaware, Necrosis Records was actually ran at the time by one Jeff Walker and Bill Steer from a little band you might know as Carcass. I'll talk about those guys more when I do my Carcass ranking, but they were looking to expand their sound, essentially, and bring in more melody, because they were still doing the whole gore grind thing with Recapitulafaction and Symphonies of Sickness, and they listened to Michael's playing, and they approached Michael Amott saying, "Hey, do you want to join?" And Michael was more than happy to join, and thus Carcass would get another guitarist, go on a little bit of a decent run with some albums you might know as Necroticism, and a little album you might know as Heartwork. And Michael would actually later go on to be in Arch Enemy and eventually Spiritual Beggars, which actually in Arch Enemy he would actually join Johan in, which I think was pretty interesting. I believe Johan was the original vocalist before Angela would join as well. And the rest of the guys will later go on to Reform Dismember, actually. And the rest, they say, is history. So we get a nice little time capsule here with this album. And I think overall, for an album with the sound of the times at this point, I think they crafted out a really, really, really damn good album here. I really do enjoy listening to this album, and it's a nice little artifact, if you will. It's a little, I wouldn't say a novelty, it's a nice little piece of what Michael Amott was doing before he eventually joined in the legendary Carcass, and what the other guys from Dismember were doing before they were reformed the band. So, yeah, folks, that is going to conclude this Blast from the Past review. Again, didn't really go into further detail as to what really happened with this band and, you know, why this happened or why they did that and so on and so forth. So, a little bit of a mini review here, but I thought this was a very interesting retro review here. So, yeah, be on the lookout for more of these in the future. I got some other albums I plan on doing in the near future that people may or may not like, but that's neither here nor there. So, folks, hope you guys enjoyed this video. What do you guys think about this Carnage album? Let me know in the comment section below. Make sure you guys leave a like, leave a comment, tap that big red subscribe button, and tap the bell so when I upload, you guys will be notified. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Most importantly, join the herd. Talk to you guys in the next video. Peace out.